She kept walking past my porch like she owned the street, eyes darting toward my mailbox every morning. I'd seen the envelopes vanish, my bank statements, utility bills, even a birthday card my mom sent from Texas. At first, I thought maybe the mailman was messing up. But when I caught that blonde bob and that smug grin one morning, standing by my fence pretending to water her flowers, I knew exactly who it was, Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. That day I watched from my window as she looked around, opened my mailbox and snatched something quick like a thief in daylight. My blood boiled, but I didn't move. Not yet, I wanted proof. So I set up a small camera behind the bushes. For 2 days, she kept doing it. Same timing, same fake smile, same nosy attitude. Every time she looked around like she was the law itself. On the third day, I had enough. I took an old mouse trap from my garage, adjusted it carefully, and tucked it inside the mailbox beneath a stack of fake envelopes. My camera was rolling. My heart was racing. I knew this would either teach her a lesson or start a neighborhood war. The next morning, right on schedule, Karen strutted over with her little poodle and that oversized sun hat. She leaned close, opened my mailbox. Snap. Her scream echoed down the whole street. The trap had caught her fingers. She dropped her mail. Her dog barked like crazy, and neighbors peeked out from their windows. She shouted, "You can't do this to me. This is harassment," while waving her bruised hand. I stepped outside calmly, camera still running, and said, "Funny, the mail you're stealing doesn't even have your name on it." Her face froze. For the first time, she didn't have words, just rage. That's when she pulled out her phone and yelled, "I'm calling the cops. You're going to jail for setting traps." I smiled slightly, knowing she had no idea what I had captured on tape. She thought she was about to destroy me, but she was about to destroy herself. Viral line. She tried to steal my mail, but she ended up stealing her own downfall. Within 15 minutes, 2 police cruisers pulled up in front of my house, lights flashing like it was some big crime scene. Karen stood there, waving her hand dramatically and pointing toward me, saying, "That's him. He set a trap in the mailbox to hurt me." The officers walked up calmly, while she kept crying about how she was just checking for community violations. I didn't say a word yet, I just waited. One of the officers, a tall man with a calm tone, said, "Sir, did you set any kind of trap?" I nodded. "Yes, officer, I did. On my property, inside my mailbox, after my mail was repeatedly stolen." Karen jumped in, screaming, "He's lying!" I'm part of the HOA board. I was making sure he wasn't keeping illegal items in there. She tried to sound official, but her voice cracked with panic. The cop frowned. "Ma'am, that's not your jurisdiction," he said. "You don't have authority over private mailboxes." That's when I pulled out my phone. "Actually, officer, I think you should see this." I played the footage from my hidden camera. Clear as day. Karen opening my mailbox multiple times and taking letters. The officers exchanged looks. Karen's jaw dropped. "That video is fake. He edited that," she stammered, stepping back. But her voice trembled. Everyone around knew she was cornered. Still, she wasn't done. She shouted, "I'll have my attorney handle this. This whole neighborhood knows I'm on the HOA board." Her words were shaking now, but she tried to keep that fake authority. The officer sighed. "Ma'am, stealing mail is a federal offense." The silence that followed could have frozen time. Her face turned pale. She stuttered something about a misunderstanding, but the damage was done. They took my statement while Karen kept whispering to herself, "This isn't over. He's going to regret this." I watched her walk away, clutching her bruised hand and her pride. What she didn't know was, I hadn't even used my real proof yet. The camera wasn't the only thing recording her. Viral line, she called the cops on me. But the evidence she feared most was already in their hands. The next morning, things felt too quiet. No barking dog, no Karen pacing outside pretending to pick weeds. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd learned her lesson. But then around noon, I saw a white SUV parked near my driveway, an official-looking vehicle with the HOA logo magnetically stuck on the door. 2 men in polos stepped out and started taking photos of my fence. I stepped outside, calm but alert. "Can I help you guys?" I asked. One of them said, "Sir, we received a complaint about unauthorized modifications to your property line. The HOA is issuing a fine." I almost laughed. "From who?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Karen was sitting in her car, watching through the window, pretending to scroll her phone. I said, "I haven't changed anything on my property. Want to see the survey documents?" They ignored me and kept snapping pictures like they had a mission. That's when I noticed something strange. The papers they were holding weren't HOA documents. The header said Neighborhood Regulation, Authority, an agency that doesn't even exist, fake, just like her authority. I decided not to argue. I walked back inside and opened my laptop. I still had access to the community's HOA email chain, thanks to a friend on the board. And guess what I found? A forwarded email from Karen, sent at 1:47 a.m., titled, "How to Handle the Mailbox Man." She had literally written, "If the cops don't get him, we'll find another way. Make his life difficult until he moves." My hands tightened around the mouse. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just Karen being nosy. She was running a personal vendetta. So I printed everything. The emails, the fake fine notice, the photos of her stealing my mail. I packed them neatly into a folder labeled HOA Abuse Report. That night she showed up again, this time standing at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed. "You think you can humiliate me in front of this neighborhood?" She hissed. "You'll be sorry." I looked her right in the eye and said, "Karen, you've already made your last mistake." She didn't know yet, but by tomorrow morning, every single homeowner in our community would. Viral line, she tried to bury me in fake rules, but I had receipts buried deeper than her lies. By dawn, the neighborhood group chat was on fire. My post had gone viral overnight. Screenshots of Karen's emails, clips of her stealing mail, and photos of her fake HOA inspection crew. Every neighbor was awake, texting, calling, demanding an emergency meeting. For the first time in years, people weren't scared of her. They were furious. When I stepped outside that morning, the street was full of whispers. Curtains shifted, doors cracked open. Karen came out too, looking pale, clutching a folder, pretending everything was a big misunderstanding. She walked toward me, forcing a smile. "You shouldn't have shared private HOA matters," she said through her teeth. I stared at her calmly. "Private? You forged documents, Karen. You lied to the police. You stole from me." Her fake smile twitched. She glanced around, realizing everyone was watching. Then the HOA president, Mr. Langford, arrived, an older man who'd always backed Karen before. He looked furious. "Karen, I've been getting calls since 5 a.m. Is this true?" She tried to spin her story again. "He set me up. He's twisting everything." But Langford cut her off, holding up printed screenshots of her emails. "Your words, Karen, your own words. You instructed people to harass a resident." Her face went white. She started trembling, muttering, "No, this can't be happening." The neighbors began gathering closer, phones recording, voices whispering. For once, she wasn't in control. I quietly stepped forward and said, "You wanted to teach me a lesson for not following your fake rules. Now the whole neighborhood knows who really broke them." Langford shook his head, sighing. "Karen, the board is voting to suspend your position effective immediately. And after this, I wouldn't be surprised if there were charges." Karen's voice cracked. "You can't do this to me. I built this community." I replied softly, "No, Karen. You bullied it." She stood frozen as everyone turned away. Her power was gone, but deep down, I could see something in her eyes, anger, not regret. That's when I realized she wasn't finished yet. Viral line. I exposed her lies, but villains like Karen don't surrender. They plot their comeback. That night I heard something outside. A faint scraping near my garage door. My security lights flicked on, but no one was there. Still, I felt that chill. That quiet tension that tells you something isn't over. I checked the cameras, scrolling through footage until I saw it. Karen, wearing dark clothes, sneaking around with a flashlight, holding what looked like a small can of spray paint. She wasn't done humiliating me. She was vandalizing my property. The footage caught her writing something on my garage in big, sloppy letters, "Thief." I didn't rush outside. I just watched in silence, letting the camera roll. When she finished, she looked proud of herself, stepped back, took a picture, and drove off. But what she didn't realize was that I had set up motion-triggered alerts that automatically backed up every clip to a cloud drive. The next morning, I acted like nothing happened. The word "thief" was still there in red paint, big enough for the mailman to see. Neighbors walked by pretending not to notice, but I saw their faces. They knew. I simply smiled and began washing it off with a hose. That's when Karen came walking down the sidewalk, coffee cup in hand, pretending to be casual. "Rough night?" she said, smirking. "Yeah," I said, "someone keeps breaking the law around here." "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" She tilted her head, that fake innocent look she always used when cornered. "You can't prove anything," she said quietly. I looked at her and smiled. "Funny. That's exactly what you said before. I sent your emails to the HOA. Then, I pointed to the sky, one of my security cameras blinking red. This time it's not just the HOA watching, Karen, it's the sheriff." She froze, realizing what I meant. That afternoon, 2 sheriff deputies arrived at her door with a warrant. The neighborhood watched from their windows as she argued, cried, and finally handed over her phone. One of the deputies walked past me and nodded politely. "Thanks for the footage, sir." "You did the right thing," Karen shouted from her porch. "This isn't over." "You think you can ruin me?" I didn't reply. I just said softly, "You did that yourself." Viral line she tried to paint. Me as the criminal. But the only thing she left behind was her own confession. A week passed. The neighborhood felt lighter. No angry notes on doors, no fake fines, no early morning spying from Karen's window. The sheriff had charged her with mail theft, vandalism, and impersonating HOA authority. Word spread fast, and everyone finally started speaking. People she'd bullied for years came forward with their own stories. But peace never feels real until you see it with your own eyes. That Sunday morning, I was sitting on my porch, coffee in hand, when a moving truck pulled up in front of Karen's house. The same house where she used to stand every day, yelling about community standards. Now, she stood at the edge of her driveway, arms folded, watching the movers haul boxes out while avoiding eye contact with anyone. Some neighbors watched quietly. Others whispered. Mrs. Collins from across the street even said, "About time." Karen looked around, her pride completely shattered. When our eyes met, she didn't glare this time. She just looked tired, defeated. Maybe for the first time, she saw herself through everyone else's eyes. She started to walk over, hesitated halfway, then said, "You really had to ruin my life, didn't you?" I stood up, calm and steady. "No, Karen, you did that when you thought you could control everyone else's." She blinked, trying to find words, but nothing came. She turned away, climbed into her car, and drove off behind the moving truck. As her tail lights disappeared, a strange silence filled the air, the kind that feels like the end of a long storm. I sat back down, exhaled, and watched the sun rise over the street she once ruled. That night I uploaded one final clip, the full story. The thefts, the lies, the footage, everything. I didn't do it for views. I did it because people like her thrive when no one speaks up. Within hours, the video hit over 1 million views. Comments poured in, veterans, parents, homeowners all saying the same thing, "You stood your ground." And as I read them, I realized something powerful. Karen thought she could take my mail, my peace, and my name. But what she gave me instead was a voice that finally got heard. Viral line. She tried to silence me, but the world ended up hearing my story instead. 2 days before she moved out, the storm finally hit its peak. That evening, I came home from work to find a police car parked outside my driveway. Again, my stomach tightened for a second, thinking maybe she'd pulled another trick. But when I walked up, the officer smiled slightly and said, "Relax, sir. We're here because your footage helped us link her to 2 other complaints in the area." I blinked. "Other complaints?" He nodded. "Turns out she wasn't just stealing your mail. We found several residents missing legal notices, checks, even prescription deliveries. You exposed more than you knew." That hit me hard. All this time I'd thought it was personal, just her obsession with me. But she had been running her own small terror campaign across the neighborhood, controlling people with fear, paperwork, and fake authority. The officer handed me a copy of the case summary. "You'll probably be called to testify. Honestly, you did the right thing recording her. You stopped her before someone got seriously hurt." As they left, I stood there in the fading evening light, realizing how close she'd come to destroying not just me, but everyone around her. Later that night, I saw her sitting alone on her porch. No poodle, no visitors, no fake confidence, just her staring into the dark. For the first time, she looked human, broken, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Actions have echoes, and hers were finally catching up. When I walked past, she muttered, "You think everyone's on your side now? Just wait, they'll turn on you too." I stopped, looked at her, and said quietly, If telling the truth makes people turn on me, I can live with that. Then I kept walking. Behind me, she whispered something under her breath, but I didn't need to hear it. Her words didn't matter anymore. The community she'd ruled through fear now stood united without her. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without checking the cameras. Viral line: she built her power on fear, but when truth showed up, her empire crumbled overnight. The morning after she finally left, the whole neighborhood felt brand new. Kids were riding bikes again. People waved to each other without looking over their shoulders, and the air didn't feel heavy anymore. It was strange how one person's control could make a whole street feel like a prison, and how quickly peace returned once she was gone. I stood by my freshly painted garage, coffee in hand, looking at the empty house across the street. The blinds were open for the first time, the windows bare. No more HOA warning signs taped to the glass. No more fake patrols, no more shouting, just silence and sunlight. Mrs. Collins walked over, smiling. "You really did it," she said softly. "You gave everyone here their voice back." I just smiled. "I didn't do much," I replied. "I just stopped staying quiet." That evening, I got a letter from the sheriff's office. An official noticed that Karen had pled guilty to mail theft and harassment. She was fined, banned from holding any HOA position, and ordered to attend community service. The irony made me laugh. The woman who used to lecture everyone about community responsibility was now serving it for real. As the sun went down, I sat on my porch and watched the lights turn on one by one across the street. Families were out again, barbecuing, laughing, waving. For the first time, this neighborhood felt alive, free. I looked at my mailbox, the same one that started it all. Clean, shining under the porch light, flag up, no traps this time. Just peace. I smiled and whispered to myself, "Guess it finally delivered something worth keeping, justice." And deep down, I knew this wasn't just about a stolen letter or a cruel neighbor. It was about standing your ground when someone tries to take your freedom piece by piece. Final viral line: she thought she was above the law, but in the end, the mailbox she stole from became the one that mailed her downfall.